what drives our wars and our war machine, and for us to be the top of the, top of the military pyramid, if you will, is our military industrial complex, in which we are always also selling to both sides regardless. Now, I would take the position that we should never, as a nation, be blindly committed to an alliance with any nation. We may have trade partners, but what I would do as far as Ukraine is I would take a position that if a war is morally and ethically tumultuous and wrong, we will intervene in that war, not on behalf of Ukraine or Russia, but as an intermediary against both. Well, so as for Ukraine, and of course you being from Ukrainian, I want to be sensitive on this, but also I tend not.
Don't be sensitive, please.
So as far as the situation, it started with 2014. Well, of course, there's always a history that goes back further, right? But 2014, Biden was effectively the theater supervisor for Ukraine and ensured that there would be a coup of a democratically elected president, and in overthrowing the rightfully elected president of Ukraine, he helped to install a false regime. And the Crimean population is about 7/8 Russian speaking natively, and then you had in the Donetsk and in pretty much everything that is east of the Dnieper River is largely Russian in not just language, but also ethnicity and cultural practice, as well as most of Odessa. And after the coup, we had the Zelensky regime and the oppression against those Russian people. And we did see that the Ukrainian government was bombing civilians and committing genocides against Russian-speaking people. They started to execute Orthodox Russian priests. They started burning Russian books. They outlawed speaking Russian language in public. And it became a common practice at the early start of this war that they would humiliate and beat and rape any Russian-speaking person in the streets, often binding them and tying them to street poles or trees, and this type of thing. I have video evidence of them crucifying a Russian Orthodox priest as the Ukrainian military. So when I was running for president, I did a full kind of expose on the crimes against humanity and the genocide being performed by the Ukrainian government. And of course, that got me extremely shadow banned on Twitter. And, despite Elon Musk's claim of being free speech absolutist, he's not, he's a liar. So I took the position that was moral and ethical and right. And I advocated that for there to be peace in the Ukraine, the largely Russian ethnicity and Russian-speaking portion of the Ukraine should be, in fact, ceded to Russia for the safeguarding of those people, and that is the right thing to do from a moral and ethical standpoint. As for Palestine and Israel, the October 7th attack was not a first of its kind. There's been, all the way back to the Makbar and the 1933 transfer agreement, which was really the start of the invasion of Palestine, and then the Balfour Declaration by Great Britain, basically handing it over to the Rothschilds to create the state of Israel. And ever since, there's been nothing but oppression and Palestine, genocide and apartheid. And it's a immoral and unethical state that should not be allowed to perpetuate. Their government should not be allowed to perpetuate. And I am fully opposed to the government of Israel and IPAC and all those things. I know for a fact that they funded Hamas for 20 years prior, and the attack on the 7th of October was permissive. It was allowed and most likely ordered by the heads of Mossad, which dropped the Iron Dome and allowed 7 hours of massacre in which they brought in their own Apaches and artillery and tanks to increase the kill count, killing hundreds more of their own Israeli people, and then proceeded to lie about 40 beheaded babies and rapes and all kinds of things that justified their very clear and systematic extermination of the people of Gaza, in which they denied them water and have bombed religious centers, schools, churches, hospitals, and refugee camps. And they have systematically sought to expel 2 million people from their native land. Now, as far as who actually has a right to that land, beyond just the obvious immoral and unethical acts of the Israeli nation, when it comes down to genetics, the Israeli people are not genetically Israeli, and Israel today is not the nation of the Bible, and it never was. The Palestinian people are genetically the people of Israel.
Yeah, man. Before we go on, I'm not gonna speak on Israel, but I must say this on Ukraine. I was born in Ukraine. I was raised in Ukraine, and little does someone know, I am from Western Ukraine, which is very ultra nationalistic, which is where the Nazi movements came out of. And I want people to understand this clear. When we say Ukrainian ethnicity or Russian ethnicity, and we put a divide between us, we are one people as far as Slavic Russians and Slavic Ukrainians, because there are little, different nationalities in Russia itself. But as far as Russian Slavs and Ukrainian Slavs, we are one people. We are Russian. The concept of Ukrainian is very, very new. It's like 100 years old. It was made purposely in order to, because the West has always liked to, well, not the West, but the people in charge. They always wanted to uh, invade Russia, and they would also invade. They would always invade Russia through Western Ukraine. Western Ukraine was like a weak link because we were so, kind of like in this hypnosis of this nationality of Ukrainian and stuff like that. But I want people to understand there's no difference between us. And this is why, to someone like me that knows this stuff, this war is so sad, because it's literally a brother killing a brother. So my next question is, you are president and you actually have control, like the people that are above you are letting you do your own thing. Let's dream about this, right? How would you settle those two wars?
So now, one of America's greatest faults when it comes to participating in foreign wars, and it is that we choose to take on allies. So this is a problem not just in that we are consistently wrong, but it's also a problem in that what drives our wars and our war machine, and for us to be the top of the top of the military pyramid, if you will, is our military industrial complex, in which we are always also selling to both sides regardless. Now, I would take the position that we should never, as a nation, be blindly committed to an alliance with any nation. We may have trade partners, but what I would do as far as Ukraine is I would take a position that if a war is morally and ethically tumultuous and wrong, we will intervene in that war, not on behalf of Ukraine or Russia, but as an intermediary against both. Now, I would go in and I would arrest Zelensky and his regime, and I would take them out of power. But at the same time, I would not allow Putin another inch without him settling for what my demands effectively were to ensure the peace in the region and stability of the economy and the continued production of grain and feeding of populations. So America has the weaponry and the ability to do that and to take on both sides of any conflict without any trouble. And that would feed our military industrial complex the powers that be here to keep them happy, frankly, and to keep them from assassinating me. And that is the position I would take. If that meant that I need to sink every Russian warship in the Black Sea and take out every single Ukrainian tank and piece of artillery and fighter jet left all at the same time, so be it.
Mind blowing. So what about Israel? How would you settle that?
Israel, I would certainly go in and take out their current powers that be. Now, they've been an apartheid state for a long time. They've clearly been used as a pawn to disrupt the Middle East and using the United States as a pawn and to return Palestinians to equal citizenry within their nation. I don't think it can be a Zionist nation. I don't think it can be a Jewish nation. It needs to be secular. And in order for that to happen, there has to be a intermediary or basically a caretaker that watches over it, void of any other government. So I would go in and I would displace the Israeli government and the Hamas that is all funded by Mossad anyways. And after taking them out, I would ask that Turkey and through Turkey, probably Syria as well, as they are both secular nations in the region, that they are the intermediaries to safeguard a transition of Israel or Palestine to a secular, singular nation. I don't think there is a two-state solution. It's frankly too small of a piece of land for there to ever be a two-state solution. And I do think that it is rightfully Palestine.
My next question I will ask, please, let's please remember universal consciousness. But are we in some sort of a World War III? And is there a possibility for nuclear war as they are trying to feed our consciousness with, man?
Yep. So we're definitely in World War III right now. We've been in World War III since COVID-19 started. I would say that the overthrow of the United States government in 2020 was also a blow within World War III. But if we wanted to, we could even back it up to the coup in Ukraine in 2014. And, you know, the reality is that everything happening now is an effect of a cause that happened prior. But we are very much in World War III today. It doesn't look anything like World War II, and it doesn't look anything like World War I. It's largely a proxy war, but we could see a significant escalation as the US dollar declines and as BRICS rises. And China has taken many of the ports, more than 1,000 ports around the world are Chinese owned and operated, and enables them to largely control shipping and global infrastructure and food. But they also we have Russia within the BRICS that controls the North Sea over Asia. And you have China looking at Taiwan, which the Taiwan Strait controls 54% of global trade annually. And then you have the Suez Canal, which is Egypt. And of course, Egypt is a portion of the BRICS now as well. And you have South Africa, or the Cape of South Africa, which again is a portion of the BRICS. So we have a scenario where BRICS could theoretically cut off the United States economically from everything outside of the Americas. And at the same time, we have, you know, foreign nations that are moving into Venezuela and Cuba, have both Russian warships present now, and the American empire is on the decline. So the decline of the dollar is really the driving factor in all of this. And if that happens suddenly, we could see a sudden breakout in military tension. If it happens gradually, it may be more of the same old grind, and we'll see continuous regional conflicts.
So you dismiss the possibility of anything nuclear?
I don't dismiss it. I think the possibility is definitely there. Now, I do have great intel sources and maintain different communities of operators that I still speak to on a regular basis. And even last year in October, there was a dirty bomb built in Ukraine that was intercepted by Russia that was supposed to hit Chernobyl and supposed to fake a nuclear attack. But the reality is a all-out nuclear war is highly unlikely, but a singular nuclear strike has never been more likely. So the chances of a singular city somewhere or an exchange of one or two nukes is extremely high within the next decade. And actually, I think it was Libya lost about 2 tons of nuclear grade uranium just about a year and a half ago. As this Palestinian conflict in Ukraine was just getting started. So the possibilities of a bad actor or an intelligence community or state actor using it to frame somebody are just extremely high. I don't see any scenario where Russia loses the war in Ukraine without using a nuke first. They're simply not going to. Crimea will not fall without a nuke being used. And I don't think Crimea will fall unless there are troops on the ground in Ukraine on behalf of NATO and the United States.
I'm going to take a left turn real quick. From what you know and from what you studied, do you think the cabal sort of uses war at this point as some sort of a ritual, man?
I do think there's a ritualistic component to it. There's a ritualistic component to virtually everything they do.
Yeah, because I keep thinking to myself, like, they have the resources, they have the control over us, they have most of the population in a semi-hypnosis, man. So I'm like, it's probably, and plus looking back in history, like every 100 years something like this goes down. And I'm like, they make war for the purpose of war at this point, it seems like, and for some sort of ritualistic meaning behind it. So let's get to the juicy stuff, man. This is what I've been waiting for. What is your mission? What is Patrick Riley's mission, man?